Once upon a time, in a magical world, there was a group of inexperienced combat friends who found themselves in a dire situation facing two fierce goblins. These monsters were clearly stronger than them, and the friends felt cornered without the necessary preparation to face such a big challenge. After the intense fight against the goblins, our protagonist Haruhiro woke up exhausted the next day. The battle had left him drained of energy and his body ached from every blow received. Nevertheless, his spirit remained unbroken, and he was determined to push forward. Haruhiro and his friend were in their room recuperating when their friend Minato burst into the room to awaken them and take them to breakfast. They headed to the kitchen, where they lived with several other people. This group of friends managed to survive in a magical world where resources were scarce, and they lived in poverty. As they conversed and enjoyed their breakfast, the word game slipped out of Minato's mouth, but none of them knew the meaning of that word. Nonetheless, it seemed familiar to them in some way. Haruhiro shared with his friends that he had no idea how he had ended up in that world, nor how long he would stay there. Most importantly, he had no memories prior to his arrival. Apparently, upon being transported to this world, he encountered a group of strangers who were equally confused and unaware of what was happening. They were all led to a hall, where they were greeted by Brittany, the head and host of the Red Moon office of the Volunteer Soldiers Squadron in Ortana's Limit Brigade. Brittany began speaking but was interrupted by a man named Renji, who demanded an explanation about the Ortana's Limit Brigade and why they were there. Renji's defiant attitude angered Brittany, who attacked him, but to everyone's surprise, Renji remained unfazed by the attack. In a direct challenge, he proposed a fight to Brittany, but the latter declined the proposal for the moment. Brittany, a generous figure, gave each of them 10 silver coins as a gift for joining the Ortana's Limit Brigade. This gesture not only motivated them, but also provided a glimmer of hope amidst so much uncertainty. As our brave adventurers tried to establish their new life plan, they discovered that Renji and his group had already made significant progress. Not only had they acquired special brigade medals, but they had also started facing higher-level monsters. Renji, in particular, proved to be much stronger than our protagonists, leaving them amazed by his skill. Meanwhile, Haruhiro and the friends he had recently met made the decision to live together, with the condition that each must find a guild to join. Haruhiro chose to join the Thief Guild, where he was welcomed by a determined and cunning woman named Barbara. She took on the role of his trainer and gave him the nickname Old Cat. With time and dedication, Haruhiro became a skilled thief, whereas his friends opted for different guilds. Meduzo became a warrior, Ranta became a dark knight, Yume became a hunter, Shihoru became a mage, and Minato became a priest. Together, they formed a diverse yet united team, ready to face any challenge that came their way. During one of their monster hunting excursions, our friends found themselves enjoying a meal together. During the conversation, the topic of Shihoru's physique came up, as she expressed concern about considering herself overweight. Ranta, always impulsive, started teasing her to the point of making her cry. However, amidst laughter and reconciliation, they decided to leave the topic behind and continue their adventure. Nourished and with renewed determination, they ventured into a dark forest in search of new challenges. That's when Yume spotted 3 goblins devouring their food greedily. This stirred a sense of injustice in her, as she realized that those monsters seemed to eat better than them, while they barely had enough money to sustain themselves. On a cold night, Haruhiro woke up startled when he realized Minato was not in his room. Worried about his friend, he decided to go out and look for him. Upon finding Minato, he revealed that he had been absent to go to a tavern with other brigade volunteers in order to gather valuable information. Haruhiro thanked Minato for everything he was doing for him and the team. They started to talk, and Minato mentioned a place in the woods where they could hunt monsters more suitable to their level. The idea excited Haruhiro, who saw it as an opportunity to improve and strengthen himself. During the conversation, they shared their experiences in their respective guilds. Minato mentioned how strict his master was, always yelling at him. Although Haruhiro didn't have such a demanding master, he understood the importance of receiving clear and rigorous instructions to improve his skills. The next day, in the middle of the forest, Haruhiro spotted a lone goblin. Without hesitation, he hurried to inform the rest of the team to prepare for the fight. They all gathered and got ready for battle. The fight against the goblin turned out to be tougher than expected. Despite being 6 against 1, the monster proved to be a formidable and skilled opponent. The adventurers struggled to surround it and attack it together, but the goblin managed to dodge their attacks and counter them ferociously. In the midst of the intense confrontation, Haruhiro got injured by the goblin. Fortunately, his friends managed to defeat it and took the reward from its neck. Minato quickly approached Haruhiro, used his healing abilities to treat the wound, and made sure his friend was okay. While the group celebrated their victory, they noticed that the seemingly defeated goblin stood up and started to flee. Ranta, filled with anger, chased after it and, once caught, threw it to the ground and mercilessly beat it until it passed off. After the battle with the goblin, the group was left in a state of dismay and regret for what had happened. Ranta, in particular, couldn't contain his sadness, and tears started to flow from his eyes. Minato, on the other hand, made a cross as a sign of respect to the fallen creature, while Haruhiro trembled, dropping his dagger to the ground. After this bitter episode, the group decided to return to the village to sell the items they had taken from the goblin. After completing the sale, they decided to take the rest of the day to rest and do whatever they wanted, seeking to distract their thoughts from the recent battle. As night fell, the boys gathered again. Ranta still seemed affected by the experience with the goblin, but he knew how to hide his emotions well. Curious, Haruhiro approached and asked Ranta what motivated him to want to end monsters. The answer came without delay. Ranta explained that by eliminating numerous creatures, he hoped to reach a level where he could summon a demon, which would bring him immense benefits. With night fully settled, the boys were in their room. Haruhiro felt the urgency to ask Minato if defeating low-level monsters from now on would be enough for their survival. However, the words wouldn't come out of his mouth, and he decided to keep that concern silent. Shortly after, Ranta got up from the bed and announced that he was going to the bathroom, mentioning that supposedly the girls were there without clothes. Filled with curiosity, and without thinking about the consequences, he headed towards the bathroom. However, he was immediately kicked out by the angry and upset girls, who were furious about his invasion of their privacy. The time had come for Ranta, filled with desperation to see his comrades Yume and Shiruru taking a bath, to convince the rest of the adventurer group to join his peculiar mission. Although they hesitated at first, they eventually agreed and set off together towards the coveted bath. Excitement grew within the group as they approached the place. They could feel the warmth of the hot water and the steam escaping through the bath's windows. With nervous laughter all around, they decided to come up with a plan to get close enough to observe without being seen. Meguzo, one of the tallest and strongest in the group, offered his help to achieve the goal. He approached Rant and volunteered to lift him up on his shoulders so he could peek through the window. Everyone waited eagerly for the moment of truth. However, in an unexpected twist, just as Ranta was peering through the window, the wall of the structure broke, and both of them fell loudly into the bath. Hot water splashed everywhere, and the group watched in astonishment as Ranta and Meguzo stood up with surprised and excited expressions. The scene inside the bath was complete chaos. Yume and Shiruru, who had been enjoying a relaxing hot bath until then, were now faced with the shocking presence of two intruders in their sanctuary of tranquility. The girls, visibly annoyed by the invasion of privacy, began to reproach the boys, directing much of their anger towards Ranta. It was a new day in Meguzo's life, who was in the kitchen preparing breakfast with his characteristic passion for cooking. As he stirred the ingredients, Haruhiro entered the kitchen, bringing more ingredients and admiring Meguzo's dedication to making people happy through food. After expressing their congratulations, Haruhiro left the kitchen to wake up the other group members and join them for breakfast. However, before serving breakfast, Haruhiro, Minato, and Meguzo knelt before the girls, acknowledging their mistakes and apologizing. Surprisingly, the only one who didn't apologize was Ranta. This angered Yume, who didn't hesitate to slap him in a display of her indignation. Despite that incident, the group decided to venture into the forest in search of food, despite the rain pouring down on them. The tension between the group members was evident as they ventured into the woods. The girls remained resentful, affecting the group's atmosphere. However, Haruhiro decided to take a step forward and approached Yume, proposing a truce. Through a sincere conversation, they managed to make amends, although Yume warned that Shiruru might need more time to forgive. Back at the camp, the group realized their hunt had been unsuccessful. They hadn't caught any prey. Days passed, and supplies started to run low, as did their clothes, which were deteriorating without the possibility of buying new ones due to a lack of money. In the midst of this difficult situation, Haruhiro was washing his clothes when he saw Shiruru and Yume approaching to wash theirs. To his surprise, the girls were wearing provocative clothes, which confused Haruhiro and made him feel uncomfortable. However, when it was Ranta's turn to wash his clothes, Haruhiro decided to intervene and convince him not to do it. He didn't want Ranta to see the girls dressed provocatively, aware that it could cause even more tension in the group. The sun rose on the horizon, announcing a new day full of adventures for our brave group of hunters. After their last failure in the Whispering Forest, they decided to head towards Damuro, an abandoned city infested with goblins, a perfect place to look for new prey. The march was challenging but exciting. Each group member carried their weapons and supplies, preparing for what awaited them. Among them, Minato stood as the leader, always at the forefront with unyielding fervor. Finally, they reached Amuro, a ruined city that seemed to have been abandoned centuries ago. There, among the remains of crumbling buildings and desolate streets, they found a sleeping goblin. Without thinking twice, they decided to attack it while it was still defenseless. The sound of steel cutting through the air resonated amidst the city's stillness, and in a few moments, the goblin lay defeated. The victory not only granted them valuable loot but also a renewed dose of confidence. They continued exploring Demuro, hunting down every goblin that crossed their path. With each victory, their skills improved and their courage grew. Using the rubble as a reference, they managed to create a detailed map of the city, allowing them to move more safely and effectively on future raids. Back in their village, each group member was eager to use their spoils to improve their quality of life. They bought more nutritious and abundant food, filling their tables with delicious treats. Minato, always thinking of the group's well-being, proposed that if they managed to save money, they could invest it in improving their skills, allowing them to face even greater challenges in the future. As they strolled through the bustling market, Minato approached Yume and Shiruru. However, Shiruru felt embarrassed and chose to remain silent. With time and Yume's kindness, Shiruru began to feel more comfortable with the boys and gradually lost her shyness. Upon returning home, the group scattered to enjoy their new acquisitions and taste the delicacies they had bought. Yume and Shiruru, excited to have more clothes and the possibility of escaping poverty, felt filled with joy. Yume encouraged Shiruru to open up more and engage in conversations with the boys, concerned that she always stayed quiet. Before retiring to rest, Minato and Haruhiro had an intimate and sincere conversation. Haruhiro expressed his gratitude to Minato for being an exceptional leader and for everything he had done for them. Minato, humble and grateful in his heart, thanked Haruhiro for being his friend as he didn't know what he would do without them by his side. It was a peaceful night. Minato and Shiruru walked in silence through a deserted street. Even though they hadn't exchanged a word yet, Shiruru didn't dare to speak to Minato. They arrived at a bridge, and Minato started feeding the pigeons, inviting Shiruru to do the same. Reluctantly, she accepted, but as she tried to feed the pigeons, she tripped and fell to the ground. Right before Shiruru hit the ground, Minato threw himself to the floor to protect her from the fall. Once they both got up, Minato confessed to being happy as they finally could talk. Before embarking on a new hunt, the whole group gathered in a circle, joining their hands and cheering out loud for motivation. They encountered a couple of goblins, and using the skills they had learned in their guilds, they defeated them with great dexterity. After facing several goblins, they decided to rest and eat. Before starting to eat, Yume thanked Elthit, the god of hunters. Ranta interrupted, mocking her, but no one paid attention to him. As they finished eating, they talked about how much they had progressed as a team. Now they were able to face 3 goblins at once, whereas before they could barely handle one. Minato recognized everyone's abilities and praised his companions. He complimented Ranta for his determination, Yume for her bravery, Shiruru for her control over the Black Mafia, and Meguzo for his strength. However, he didn't mention anything about Haruhiro. After the compliments, Minato told the group that it was time to continue hunting, and everyone followed him. Just as they were on their way to continue their hunt, an arrow was shot from afar. The arrow was headed straight towards Minato, but Haruhiro gave himself and took the hit on his arm. A group of strong goblins appeared suddenly and put the adventurers in trouble. The large goblins chased and attacked the group directly while the archer goblins shot from a distance. Minato ordered a retreat, and as they fled, an arrow struck Minato's back, leaving him severely injured. When they escaped the city and reached the forest, Minato collapsed due to his wound. The others tried to help him, but Minato's healing magic had no effect on himself. They were out of options. Minato stared at Haruhiro and told him he relied on him, then he lost his life. The group took Minato to a temple seeking help from the monk there, but he informed them that there was nothing he could do since once someone lost their life, it was not possible to bring them back. Furthermore, the monk warned them that they had 5 days to Minato's body and bury him within the borders, or else Minato would turn into a demon due to a curse in that world. Everyone in the group was devastated, feeling like a part of themselves had been ripped away. Losing their friend was a heavy blow for all of them. The monk offered to cover the expenses from Minato's funeral, but Haruhiro refused. As night fell, the group headed to the border to release Minato's ashes and give him the funeral a good man like him deserved. Engulfed in sadness over the loss of Minato, Haruhiro and his friends found themselves in a desolate afternoon with broken hearts and empty pockets from the costly funeral. The pain of the absence was so overwhelming that Ranta decided to leave, as without Minato, the group seemed to lack purpose. Driven by a mix of frustration and sadness, Yume abruptly stood up and slapped Ranta, then succumbed to deep crying. Meanwhile, Haruhiro and Meguzo decided to search for Ranta at the bar frequented by Minato, where they found him sitting alone at a table. Without saying a word, they joined him and started drinking together. The tension in the air quickly grew, and soon Haruhiro and Ranta began arguing vigorously, shouting at each other. In the midst of the commotion, Meguzo, annoyed by the fight, raised his voice and ordered them to stop. Listening to their friend, both of them let their guard down and continued the conversation in a calmer manner. At that moment, an old acquaintance of the group, named Kikawa, made an appearance. He explained to them that Minato was the easiest target in battle due to his role as a cleric in the team. Furthermore, he informed them that he knew another cleric willing to join them. The next day, Kikawa introduced them to Mary, a cleric who showed her willingness to work alongside them. After finishing a hunt that night, Haruhiro, Ranta, and Meguzo returned to the bar, but this time with the disappointment of having found such an ill-suited replacement for Minato. Mary showed no contribution in combat against the monsters and did not fit well with the group, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere. Unexpectedly, Renji, a former companion in adventures, entered the bar. He had achieved fame as a respected soldier by all. Approaching their table, Renji handed Haruhiro a gold coin as consolation for the loss of Minato. However, Haruhiro rejected the gesture and returned the coin, arguing that they had to earn money on their own, just as Minato would have wanted. As night fell, Haruhiro sought out Yun to apologize for including Mary in the group without consulting her or Shiro. They met in a sorrowful setting and immersed themselves in a sea of tears, remembering Minato. After a long conversation, they decided to move forward and make an effort to get along with Mary, working together to make the team prosper. Shiora, determined to apologize to Haruhiro for witnessing his moment of vulnerability, headed to the boys' room. However, her intention was interrupted by Ranta, who, upon learning of the situation, exploded in anger and decided to cause a scene. Tension settled within the group, but they decided to set that matter aside for now and focus on breakfast. As they shared their meal, the conversation revolved around Mary. Everyone agreed that they needed to make more effort to include her in the group and be kinder to her, hoping to improve the relationships among the team members. With this resolution in mind, they began their hunting journey, heading towards Demuro. During the journey, everyone attempted to engage in conversation with Mary, hoping to connect with her in some way. However, her hostile and disrespectful attitude remained, making it difficult for any attempts to establish a bond. Nevertheless, they didn't give up and persisted in their efforts. Upon reaching Demuro, they encountered a group of goblins they had to confront. The battle was intense, and unfortunately, Meguzo was injured in the head. At that moment, Mary showed a different side by using her healing abilities to tend to the wounded. Although it was just a small gesture, it made it clear that, despite her attitude, she still cared, at least to some extent, about the team's well-being. After the battle, Haruhiro decided to take the opportunity to talk to Mary about her role in the team. However, his attempt at communication was frustrated when she staunchly refused to talk and only responded with conflicting answers. Communication with Mary was becoming increasingly challenging. In the evening, the whole group decided to go to a bar to relax. During the gathering, they noticed Mary entering the establishment and going straight to the bar, completely disregarding the rest of the group. As they observed in silence, curious about the situation, a soldier from a prominent clan approached her to talk. They refrained from intervening, letting the scene unfold. Back at home, while everyone was asleep, Haruhiro went outside to enjoy a warm drink. In that moment of tranquility, he began to reflect on the leadership role that Minato had entrusted to him before his departure. To his surprise, a projection of Minato appeared and encouraged him to keep moving forward before fading away. The following day, the group prepared for another hunting expedition. Haruhiro noticed that Meguzo was fighting without a proper helmet, so they all decided to buy him a new one when they returned to town. During the expedition, Ranta spotted a group of goblins, triggering a fight with a larger number than they were used to. In the midst of the battle, a goblin leaped to attack Shiora, but Mary stepped in to defend her. This act of bravery was another indication that Mary was gradually becoming more involved and protective of the group. After their victory, they returned to the city, where Haruhiro bid farewell to Mary, inviting her to join them for a meal. However, she declined the offer and went on her own. Later at night, the group decided to go to the bar to find the soldier who had spoken with Mary. Hoping to gather more information about her, they asked him to tell them about her past. The soldier led them to Hayashi, who used to be part of the same group as Mary. Sitting at a table, Hayashi shared Mary's story, revealing that she used to be a cheerful and creative person before a disastrous mission. During that mission, they were pursuing a fearsome white kobold that turned out to be too powerful. The The confrontation resulted in the pass off of 3 members of the group, leaving Mary with a deep trauma and a sense of guilt for not being able to save her friends. That experience marked a drastic change in her personality, explaining her cold and distant attitude towards others. Hayashi tells the group about a battle that changed Mary's life forever. During that confrontation, Mary completely exhausted her magical powers and couldn't heal her injured comrades. One of them bravely gave his life so that Mary and Hayashi could escape. That tragic experience altered Mary's way of acting. Accompanied by Hayashi, she joined the Orion group, but soon realized that seeing Hayashi constantly reminded her of that painful episode. Therefore, she decided to leave the group and follow her own path. However, after a conversation with Hayashi, the group leaves a bar and heads to a bridge to continue the talk. Rant, one of the team members, suggests that they shouldn't treat Mary well, arguing that everyone has a tragic past and doesn't use it as an excuse to be unpleasant. Shiruru interrupts and emphasizes the importance of making Mary feel comfortable in the group in order to improve their ability to fulfill missions. Ranta complains that his opinion is never heard, which leads Haruhiro to apologize to him and promise that his opinion will be taken into account from now on. At the end of the conversation, they reach a consensus. They won't be hostile to Mary, although none of them knows exactly how to treat her during the next mission. The next day, while the group is hunting, Haruhiro and Yu manage to spot a goblin who is carrying Haruhiro's precious dagger. Although Haruhiro prepares to impulsively confront it, Yum stops him, warning about the dangers of such a hasty decision. They eventually return to the rest of the group and decide to retreat due to lack of goblin activity. Before leaving the area, Haruhiro addresses the whole group and speaks to Mary in front of them. He shares with her the story of Minato, the leader of his former group, and how his gone affected them all. He discovers that everyone in the group considers themselves friends and wishes for Mary to be part of that friendship. The support and encouragement from the other group members give Mary a small sense of comfort and acceptance. Upon reaching the village, Haruhiro invites Mary to join them in the search for a helmet for Meguzo, but she declines the offer and withdraws. Nonetheless, the group moves forward and dedicates themselves to finding the best helmet possible for their dear companion Meguzo. As the days pass and the group continues their fight against the goblin, they all begin to strengthen their skills and further solidify their unity. The relationship with Mary gradually improves, and she becomes increasingly close to the group, even sharing regular dinners with them. Throughout their journey, all group members work hard and save money to acquire a supremely high-quality armor for Meguzo, demonstrating their commitment and camaraderie. On a quiet night, while contemplating the stars, Haruhiro envisions the image of Minato in his mind. He is convinced that somewhere, Minato is proud of the progress and strength of their group, despite the adversity and losses they have endured along the way. A new day dawned in the quiet town of Damura, where our brave protagonists prepared themselves to face a fearsome group of goblins. Haruhiro, with determination in his eyes, stepped forward and delivered a speech filled with fervor and motivation, reminding everyone of Minato's brave action and the fallen friends of Mary. His words resonated in the heart of each person, filling them with courage and determination for the approaching battle. Without wasting any time, the group ventured into the goblins' hideout. With skill and cunning, they swiftly eliminated the guards at the entrance and made their way inside. One by one, they confronted the goblins with ferocity and determination, but these creatures proved to be formidable and knowledgeable about the humans' combat style. In the midst of the fierce battle, Mary joined the fray, providing valuable assistance to the group. In a moment of carelessness, Yum got injured, but Mary, with her expertise in healing magic, swiftly came to her rescue, mending her wounds and strengthening her to continue fighting. Despite the goblins' resistance, the group didn't give up and continued the fight with unwavering determination. After a grueling battle, they finally managed to defeat the remaining goblins. Filled with confidence, they ascended to the rooftop, where one last goblin lay in agony. However, the situation took an unexpected turn when an arrow struck Mary's back, causing her to fall to the ground. They discovered that a surviving goblin on the rooftop was responsible for the attack. The room filled with more goblins, but the enraged group, determined to avenge their injured comrade, mercilessly defeated them. Even though wounded, Mary assured Haruhiro that she was fine, she just needed her injury treated. Filled with rage and determination, Haruhiro ascended to the rooftop to confront the goblin responsible for his friend's injury. As he faced it, he realized that this goblin carried the lost dagger, which infused him with additional strength to defeat it. Fighting fiercely, Haruhiro managed to snatch the dagger from its grasp and end its life. After their victory against the goblins, the group returned to the town, where a gentle snowfall began. Together, they decided to go to the cemetery where Minato rested. Haruhiro approached his grave and spoke to him with gratitude, thanking him for everything he had done for them. He mentioned that they were all now voluntary soldiers and could afford to buy all the medals they couldn't acquire before due to the lack of economic resources. As an act of tribute and love towards their fallen friend, Shiraru placed a medal on Minato's grave. It was an emotional moment for the group, leaving the cemetery behind and moving towards an uncertain future. As they walked back home, Haruhiro and Mary finally had an intimate and friendly conversation. They discussed their wounds, which Mary had already healed with her magic, but they also shared their grief over the loss of dear friends and the pain it caused in their hearts. With a mix of sadness and hope in their hearts, they bid farewell and each went their own way home. Haruhiro woke up at his house and noticed the absence of his fellow adventurers. He only found Meguzo preparing breakfast after the tiring hunting day before. They decided to take a day off, and Haruhiro sat down to eat with Meguzo, who informed him that Ranta had gone fishing early and the girls hadn't been seen all morning. Determined to make the most of the day, Haruhiro went out for a walk and met Shihoru on the bridge, feeding birds and enjoying the sunrise. He continued his walk and found Mary on the balcony of a dining room. They sat down to talk, and Mary told him about the lodging where she lived. Meanwhile, Ranta enjoyed a peaceful day of fishing at the lake, from where he could see Yum climbing in the distance. Nightfall came, and the group gathered at the bar. They were informed that other rookie groups were having trouble with goblins in Demuro. They all sat down to discuss the situation, as they had planned to go to Demuro the next day, but the possibility of not finding anything worried them. At that moment, Meguzo proposed changing the objective of their hunt. Haruhiro suggested going to the dangerous Siren Mine, which excited Ranta but raised doubts among the others due to its peril. Finally, Haruhiro convinced the group that facing such a challenge would be fun and strengthen their unity. However, Mary felt uncomfortable with the proposal and decided to leave the bar. Haruhiro pursued her and found her. Mary expressed her fear because she lost her friends in the Siren Mine, but Haruhiro urged her to overcome that trauma accompanied by the group, her true friends. Before heading to the Siren Mine, they agreed to prepare themselves as best as possible. Haruhiro decided to train with Barbara to learn a new technique called Spider Surprise. The training proved exhausting, and they took a break during which they started talking about women, although Haruhiro was too tired to keep up with the conversation. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived, and our brave protagonists found themselves in front of the Siren Mine, ready to face the dangerous mission ahead. Deep inside the Siren Mine, our brave protagonists, Haruhiro and Ranta, find themselves entangled in a fierce battle against a pack of wolf monsters. With newfound abilities, Haruhiro and Ranta fearlessly confront their enemy, leading the rest of the group with a display of skill and courage. As the wolves fall one by one, the group grows stronger and secures victory. Following the battle, the adventurers discover talismans in the possession of the defeated wolves. Mary, the group's expert on mystical creatures, informs them that these talismans belong only to low-class kobolds, and that higher-class kobolds possess even more powerful amulets. Determined to face greater challenges, the group ventures deeper into the mine and heads towards the gondola. On their way, they come across a group of sleeping wolves and decide to attack. Shiraru, with their special ability, manages to immobilize the wolves, enabling the rest of the group to swiftly dispatch the defenseless enemies. Confidence soars and everyone becomes emboldened. However, the confrontation with the wolves raises a concern in Haruhiro. While the others are sleeping, he steps out to have a private conversation with Ranta. Carefully, Haruhiro tries to convince Ranta of the importance of teamwork and the necessity to avoid acting individually, but Ranta defensively attributes the team's issues to others. The discussion ends without reaching an agreement, and Ranta retreats to sleep, seemingly indifferent to Haruhiro's words. As Haruhiro, disheartened, remains outside, he is awakened by Yum, who is training her knife skills near him. Yum's perseverance and effort restore a glimmer of hope and determination to Haruhiro. Determined to overcome their differences, our group once again ventures into the Siren Mine. Amidst the battle against more wolves, Mary unveils a new ability, putting the enemies to sleep and slowing them down for easier defeat. However, Ranta continues to fight selfishly, endangering his companions. Despite the tension, the group manages to defeat the fierce wolves and ascends to a land of crops, where they witness a pack of wolves guarding a herd of animals. At that moment, Mary becomes filled with fear and anxiety upon spotting a gigantic wolf, immediately recognized by Haruhiro as a high-class monster that took the lives of Mary's previous companions. Everyone crouches in silence, hoping their presence goes unnoticed by this formidable creature. Paralyzed by the situation and overwhelmed by memories of her companions, Mary finds herself in a difficult position. But in a moment of clarity, Haruhiro manages to awaken her and bring her back to reality. Together, they manage to escape from that place and head towards a lava-filled area where metals are forged. They decide to rest in the kobold resting area, but in order to get there, they must face one of the guardians. Finally, Mary finds her old staff, an object that evokes emotions in her. However, her tranquility is interrupted by a strange noise coming from a dark corner. Using his cunning, Ranta throws an illuminated blade towards the sound, revealing the presence of 3 possessed bodies. These bodies turn out to be Mary's former companions, whose souls did not find peace because they were not properly buried. Determined to free her friends from their eternal torment, Mary learns a spell to break the curse and decides to confront them. However, the enemies prove to be extremely powerful, and it is then that Haruhiro decides to join the battle to aid Mary and Ranta, as they do not believe they can defeat them alone. Haruhiro rushes to assist Mary, and together they successfully cast the spell on one of the bodies, free and allowing it to rest in peace. Following Mary's lead, Haruhiro and Ranta fight against the next body, but Mary intervenes and enchants the last body, putting an end to the curse that haunted them. After the battle, the group sits down to rest and process what just happened when they are suddenly startled by a loud impact. As they turn around, they discover that a massive wolf, which they had tried to escape from earlier, has caught up to them. With no time to react, the wolf charges at them, primarily targeting Haruhiro. Fortunately, Haruhiro manages to dodge the wolf's attack, and they all start running away from the scene, but the wolf howls powerfully, summoning its pack. Now, being chased by a pack of wolves, their lives are in danger. In the midst of desperation, Haruhiro falls from a tower while trying to escape, but Ranta quickly saves him. However, as they both try to climb up again, Ranta is knocked down and falls into the abyss. With bravery, Ranta shouts to Haruhiro to get away and move forward, as he is the leader and must ensure the rest of the group's safety. Despite the anguish and guilt weighing on him, Haruhiro manages to climb up the tower, leaving his friend behind. The rest of the group looks at him with concern, but Haruhiro, showing his determination, orders them to carry on and instructs Mary to lead them to the 5th floor to find an escape. Meanwhile, Ranta finds himself alone and surrounded by an overwhelming number of kobolds, fighting with all his might to survive in the midst of the uneven confrontation. In the midst of the scorching lava zone, Ranta skillfully managed to escape his pursuers and hid among the animals of the herd. Meanwhile, Haruhiro and the rest of the group were gathered, strategizing a plan to rescue Ranta and escape from the dangerous situation they were in. Suddenly, a thunderous roar echoed through the air, accompanied by an intimidating wolf howl. The interruption surprisingly came from Ranta, who had miraculously ended the life of one of the guards in an astonishing act. Haruhiro and his companions were awestruck by Ranta's display, as he not only managed to escape from such a perilous place but also defeated one of their enemies while surrounded by threats. However, the victory was short-lived, as the imposing giant kobold identified Ranta as an enemy and relentlessly pursued him. Stumbling in his attempt to escape, Ranta watched his strength fading away in the face of the approaching enemy, but his luck changed when an arrow flew to his rescue. The arrow was fired by Yin, who had returned with the group to save her comrade. Haruhiro acted swiftly, taking Ranta into his arms and preparing for the confrontation. The group fought fiercely against the kobolds, and with a combination of skills and teamwork, they managed to defeat all the low-level enemies standing in their way. Taking advantage of the confusion, the group also blinded the high-level kobold, allowing them to escape together from that dangerous situation. Once outside the battlefield, Mary tended to Ranta's wounds, utilizing her healing expertise and skills. After a few moments of care, the wound started to close, and Ranta could rest and recover. Continuing their journey to escape from the Siren Mine and return to Ortana, their hometown, the group realized that the battle had taken its toll. Mary informed Haruhiro that she wouldn't be able to use magic for a while, as she was exhausted, and they also noticed that Shiro looked very fatigued. As they advanced along a cliff, the group enjoyed a seemingly calm moment until they were abruptly surprised once again by the vengeful fury of the high-level kobold. The enemy had caught up to them, thirsting for revenge and filled with terrifying rage. In a desperate attempt to save his friends, Haruhiro made a bold decision. He would engage the kobold on his own, distracting it enough for his companions to escape and survive. However, this decision came at a high cost. In a risky maneuver, Haruhiro managed to carry out his plan, but both he and the kobold plunged down a deep cliff. As Mary tried to descend to help him, Ranta stopped her, knowing that the priority was everyone's survival. From the depths of the abyss, Haruhiro witnessed his friends slipping to safety, just as he had wished. Despite multiple wounds and the darkness threatening to bring him into unconsciousness, Ranta yelled at him not to give up and to keep fighting. In an act of sheer determination, Haruhiro regained consciousness and stood before the fearsome kobold. As he faced his enemy, a strange energy surged within him, allowing him to visualize the kobold's movements in slow motion. Taking advantage of this advantage, Haruhiro attacked with precision and finesse, successfully ending his adversary's life in a single strike. Exhausted, he collapsed to the ground. When Haruhiro regained consciousness, he found himself at home, surrounded by his friends. They had managed to rescue him and bring him to safety. Stepping out of his room, he was welcomed with joy and warmth. Miguzo offered him a bowl of soup, and they sat together to share the meal while Shiruru accompanied them. At that moment, Rantu approached and tossed him a bag containing the reward obtained from defeating the kobold. He informed Haruhiro that they had waited for him to wake up to decide what to do, as he was the leader of their team. Moved by an irresistible curiosity, Haruhiro decided to head toward the bridge. Mary joined him there and handed him the medallion that had been broken during their intense battle. This gesture symbolized the mutual recognition of their bravery and determination. As night fell, everyone gathered at the bar to celebrate the team's victory in toast to Haruhiro, who had managed to defeat the powerful kobold. Amidst the celebration, Renji, a well-known adventurer, entered and congratulated Haruhiro. He also sincerely apologized for his past attitude when he learned of the sorrowful loss of Minato. The next day, Haruhiro decided to visit the grave of his dear friend Minato. There, he recounted their latest adventure and bid farewell, closing a chapter but always carrying him in his heart. With renewed spirit and bravery in their hearts, Haruhiro and his group prepared themselves to face new and thrilling adventures together. The conclusion of a story marked by adversity became the beginning of a new chapter, filled with hope and challenges. Hit the like button and subscribe if you like it. Write in the comments the word "I like anime" if you want more videos like this one.